Greetings. I'm Dr. Stephen Towns, pastor of Real Life Ministries in Henrico County, Virginia. Momentum is partially defined as strength or force gained by motion or a series of events. In sports vernacular, momentum can be a game changer. Here in this post-pandemic season of lingering infections, skyrocketing inflation, and over 200,000 loved ones dead, few would argue that our current series of events loom tragic. Yet for servant leaders, I believe that surviving is thriving. As a ministry servant leader, surviving in this climate demands perseverance and faith in the providence of God. Servant leaders in ministry must be willing to be led by the Holy Spirit and at times completely ignore the success formulas of the pre-pandemic church. The days of the pre-pandemic church and the methodologies for successful ministry then by necessity have changed, and many believe may never return. There are also many Christians who once hurried into their places of assembly whenever the doors were opened and are now content with streaming services and worshiping in their pajamas. Sadly, I've even heard some seniors say that due to fears of viral infection, they may never set foot in churches again. So as ministry servant leaders, we must seek the will of God for guidance during these still turbulent times. Additionally, having a heart for God's people and passion for seeing souls saved compels leaders to levels of outreach, servanthood, previously unseen. If all things work together according to Romans 8:28, is it possible that our primary focus on outreach was God's plan all along? According to Thomas S. Rayner, when speaking of the post-pandemic church, only outwardly focused churches will survive. During my 25 years of outreach ministry, I have long surmised that our churches were becoming rest homes for the saints instead of hospitals for sinners. But unfortunately, far too many people today are hurting in multiple ways never before experienced. And we, the church, cannot afford to wait for them to find us inside of our four church walls. In the past, the majority of our churches during their midweek and Sunday services focused solely on our spiritual health. And in most instances, you had to be in attendance to benefit. Holistically speaking, we are in a season where our mental and our physical health must also be addressed. Throughout the New Testament, Jesus was non-discriminate in who he healed. However, he often asked the question, will thou be made whole? I believe that even then, Jesus was referring to not only our physical, but also our mental and our spiritual health. The third epistle of John builds on that premise in chapter 1, verse 2, where it states, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth." As a result, I've focused on engaging our community by establishing what I've set up to be a department of community health, embracing the mission of leading our communities across Virginia to more healthy outcomes and more vibrant lifestyles. Just as the Old Testament temples, we hope to position our churches to be the centers of community life by supplying vital information on how to improve our spiritual, our mental, and our physical health. We have held several community health fairs offering vaccinations, health screenings, clothing, food, and toys even for the children. These events all generate momentum. We have partnered with the Virginia Department of Health, holding special testimony and informational services, increasing awareness on diseases such as Alzheimer's and dementia. These follow-up services focusing on the needs of our communities, which previously went unspoken, they help us to sustain momentum. We strategically work hard to remove the stigma of mental illness from our churches. And we teach our communities that it's okay to say that you're not okay. Intentionally venturing outside of a church's four walls demands leading cross-culturally. And in many cases, leading cross-culturally through outreach also demands reciprocal trust with the communities embraced. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, trust is not easily earned in communities of color, but sadly, trust can be quickly lost. And before trust can be earned, oftentimes relationship must first be established. We must become more empathetic. All churches can benefit from relational commitments to empathy. To gain and sustain momentum from our outreach efforts, servant leaders must become expert listeners to build on those relationships. Specifically regarding momentum, I believe that relational ministry is the key to maintaining any momentum gain. That involves possibly jeopardizing the interpersonal risk of servant leaders with the reality that those we invested in may possibly betray that trust. Nevertheless, even in ministry, nothing ventured, nothing gained. The Bible encourages us to be not weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Perilous times engulf us, and servant leaders who have survived in reality have thrived. And in thriving, we must continue to lead courageously, willing to be the Good Samaritan, outward focused, and Holy Spirit equipped to be fishers of men. Thank you, and may God continue to grant you more grace for this journey.